Hello viewers and welcome to this new video. Some of you asked to show my models, how I built them. So today we're gonna see how I built my 1 to 350 scale Titanic and Bismarck RC converted. So let's start. First, let's see the Titanic, which was the first one I built and also the first one RC model I've ever made. So, first of all, you can take off the superstructure, like removing this big piece on the top and put apart. As that, you can see the inside of the ship. But where does this component come from? This was a very old RC boat I bought a long time ago. I almost took everything from her, apart, of course, the electronics and a little piece, which is this one, this blue part. So this blue part comes from the end of the motor to the end of the servo motor, right here. It was the aft of the RC boat that I cut off. First, I removed all the components with all the instruments you are gonna use to remove the components. So the boat was without any components. At this point, I cut the boat, while keeping the stand for the motor and the servo and the propeller, and also the rudder, of course, inside this piece, so I could remount the motors in this piece. After that, I made a hole inside the Titanic. As you can see also here, it doesn't seem very well, but there is a hole. So I put this piece from the old RC boat inside the Titanic and glued it to make it waterproof and very strong. At this point it was almost finished. I remount the motors, made all waterproof, gluing and taping all the water flood. And I finished up putting the batteries and the rest of the electronics, like the antenna, which goes from the main card to the mast from this hole. As you can see, the motors has two gears that goes with one axle inside the ship hull and comes out from the bottom of the ship. This is the original part of the RC old boat, and also the rudder is pretty much the same thing, except that I used some plastic board to make it bigger so it could turn easily. But the superstructure was so heavy and high that I couldn't make it very stable, so I decided also to make a stabilizer under the ship with 300 grams weight. And so that works very good now. The only problem is that the range of the radio control, which is this one. Now I will show you that how this ship works. It's not very long, and so you can't go it far away, but it still works very well. So let's start. As you can see, this one remote control is the original from the old RC boat, and every other things that regards the RC conversion comes from that boat, as I said before. So the speed is only one up and one down. and also the rudder has two positions. And that works with everything in the Titanic. So we can switch off this ship, close it, and then pass to the Bismarck. So this is the model of the battleship Bismarck. As the Titanic, it was a little bit more difficult to make because I had to implement new types of electronics. The model itself was not so easy as the Titanic too, but it was very good and very well made, so it came also up very good. So let's see how it works and how I built it. As the Titanic, the first thing we can do is removing the whole superstructure. So we can take apart and lift it up. So we can see the inside of the ship. We have two parts to lift up. One is the center part, which is over the main electronics, and the aft part where there are the axle of the propellers and the rudder mechanism. So the first thing you can do to RC convert the ship is to make it waterproof and cut the holes and make the axles for the rudders and the steering gears and also the propeller. So first you can make two holes on the rudders. As you can see, the Bismarck has two rudders. And then you take a little empty axle, so you can put another axle inside it, and you can make it almost waterproof because inside the two axles doesn't pass any kind of water because it's very small. And then with the super glue you can glue it, and so the water doesn't pass, but it still works, the rudder. Now the servo is locked, but when I on it, it will move very good. And yes, then you glue it. The second thing is to make the holes and the axles for the propellers. In this case, we have the Bismarck with 3 propellers, 2 on the right and left and 1 on the center. As I said before, the rudder is pretty much the same thing, but the propellers are a little bit longer to do because the axles are that longer. As you can see, we have a stand for the propeller right here. You can make it a little bit bigger with a little drill, so the axle can pass inside it and then come out for the propeller. So after that you can glue it. For this thing the center propeller doesn't have this problem, so the axle came out when the hole finishes. In this case the hole finishes here and not here, so we had to implement this support for the propeller. Okay, now we have everything glued, everything waterproof. We have to buy the components and make the stands. We have the stand for the servo. As you can see, the servo is very high for the ship. It's up on the right motor, and it doesn't touch the axle of the motor, of course. But we have this stand where the servo stays, and it stays very good because it's at the right height for the steering mechanism, and at the right height because the deck doesn't touch it, so that's good. And then we have the wires to the receiver and the regulators. Then we have the three main motors. We have the left and right ones, which are called the secondary motors. Because they are smaller, I decided to do like this, which has this little connector, which is almost flexible. And they are not very powerful, but they go at a quite high speed. So when the ship doesn't very good work, you can use this to take it back to port. And then we have the central in motors, which is the biggest one, and it's very powerful. I limited the RC controller to almost, I think, 12% of this motor. So at the maximum speed, it has only 12% on the maximum power of the motor. It has two connectors. Some of you in the previous videos have noticed that it vibrates a little bit. Is that the motor is so high that I couldn't make a very long axle to the motors. I had to implement these two connectors to make it a little bit higher. And then we pass to the hose to the propellers. For standing these huge motors, I built this little plastic support with flexible plastic, but it's also very resistant, and in this case I also made it waterproof, almost waterproof, because it has the hole for the motor to stay in, and so the water doesn't pass to the most important part, which is the one with all the wires, the receiver, which is this one, and the variators, which are this one for the main motor and this one for the secondary motors. And then we have finally the battery inside the bow deck of the ship. So we can connect the two wires. So now the battery is connected to the rest of the electronics. We have these four wires coming out from this little piece. Two goes in the secondary motors regulator and two in the main motor regulator. Then there are two other wires from each regulator, which goes from the regulator itself to the motor, as you can see here. And then we have the others, which with other two wires divided in four wires, two in one motor and two in the other. Then we have in the same regulators, we have other wires. One is with two wires, which is the switch. Everyone has it, and one is here and the other is right here. And then we have some other wires in each motor. We have three here and three coming out from here, which goes to the receiver. We have two different channels for the regulators and one for the servo, which, as you can see, is this one and goes to the servo. Now we can switch on the radio transmitter. And now we can control our battleship. As you can see, we have this channel goes from the rudder and nothing other. So we have only this move, and we have this one for the main motor. As you can see, it vibrates a little bit, also in high speed. As you can see, as a high speed, it vibrates a lot. It vibrates so much that the ship can actually move, even if it's not water. But in water, this movement and this vibration doesn't doesn't happen because the water make it a little bit softer, so it does not vibrate so much. And then we have the secondary motors with this secondary channel, as you can see here. We can rotate this lever. Unfortunately, this motor doesn't work very well, but on water we have the thrust of this other motor, which makes it work. And these are the secondary motors. So, in general, the ship works very well. And so now we can switch off the transmitter and take out the battery. So now the Bismarck is switched off. And we can close it again with the two decks. And so now it's closed. For the stabilization of the ship, there's not the problem of the Titanic. Which, as you can see, it's a little bit lighter than the width of the Bismarck, and the part under the water is a little bit bigger than the Titanic. So we have not these problems for the Bismarck. It's very stable. And so that is everything for this video. If you have other things to ask me, please write on the comment. Remember to leave like and subscribe, not to lost any videos from this channel. And we will see you on the next video. Bye bye.